Hi, everybody. Welcome to Monday. We're calling this Monday Hot Mess Monday. The last Monday video of 2020. And I decided every so often I want a night that's just a whole bunch of different kinds of soups, and I call it Soupapalooza. I'm halfway through right now making French onion soup. And my eyes, if you think I look weird right now, it's because my eyes are like, the onions. So I decided to stop, make this video so I was doing for something productive, and then go back to chopping the onions. Because, I was just like, so if you like this sort of insanity, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Boss Fight episode 3 is still on track for Wednesday, barring disaster. I'll know for sure tomorrow. But barring disaster, it's gonna be up. At least the 1080p version is gonna be up. I'm prioritizing that because that's the most watched one. The captions will not be done, as I said, but it will be up for the holidays, so you guys can watch. There will be captions, they just won't be corrected. So they'll be the auto-generated ones from YouTube. I will go in there and fix the captions when I have a minute. I just want to get this. I got to get it done. It's been going on so long. But the bulk of the show is done. And I just have to do the end credits. And then I've already done a test output, so I'm not so worried about that. Worst case scenario, I have the thing that I can just reformat. Like I have it in its original 4K version. So the only reason the 4K version might not be up by Wednesday is it takes a lot longer to upload. Moving on to the topic for today. As I said, this week is going to be your feedback from last week. So, oh man, I need a break. So, today was, I asked the question, what insecurities do you have that you don't feel like you can talk about and you feel like they're holding you back? And so all I did was I went through a whole bunch of comments, edited them some for time, so that I could get as many in as I possibly could. And I'm just going to read them. And I'm going to start with the type of insecurity that seemed to be hands down the most common. And it was basically fears of rejection due to culture war issues. And so that's where I'm going to start. Here we go. Pump up the volume there. My biggest insecurity is having my fundamental values and beliefs taught to me being a lie, believed and followed by no one. Adding on to that is another insecurity of standing up for those ideals and holding other people accountable will lead to my ostracization. These fears led me to developing a distrusting attitude towards most people who say they want to fix things. I tend to expect fence-sitting virtue signaling at best or digging their cause's grave deeper at worst. It's front and center in the latest hashtag social movements in which bad actors poison the well, leading to me trying to distance myself from them even though I end up seeing myself as a coward. It's a catch-22. If I do nothing, I'm called privileged for daring to not be angry every minute of my life. If I join in, then I'm ignored or mocked by my allies and have my reputation and livelihood on the line. Meanwhile, corporate media is doing nothing of substance to alleviate these issues because I'm sure pulling Gone with the Wind and adding BLM flags to your workplace wouldn't stop a cop from killing a dozen homeless African Americans over a $20 bill. I added a bit here for time. I want to be a helper and a friend while leaving a benevolent mark on the world, but how can I do that when I become so bitter and scared of my own shadow? And I think a lot of people relate to that comment. I thought it was particularly eloquently put there. In a similar vein, I find I have some self-confidence issues that the culture war has damaged even further. It's hard trying to post something when you know you'll just be called a bigot if you don't go along, and from there, hard to make social connections. It's hard to find joy in anything if people just seem more interested in taking it away from you just to gloat they smashed a bit of the patriarchy, but I can't stand up anymore. I just try and hide and keep what few fandoms I have private to prevent infiltration. I used to try and bring this stuff up, usually to try to diffuse the toxic gamer rhetoric, and usually got yelled at, so it really only happens here anymore. That's like, okay, that's heavy. I mean, I'm glad this community helps, but see the commonalities? Here's another one. I think in general my insecurity, and probably many others, boils down to the fear of making a mistake, which leads to the fear of failure. This insecurity, I think, was brought upon by my dad, who implied, intentionally or accidentally, that if I fail, society would view me as a nobody who doesn't deserve anything good. And unfortunately, I think he was kind of right. It does seem to me that society as a whole has an incredibly low tolerance for failure of any kind. And I think that what cancel culture is part of. If you fail to toe an ever-changing party line, you get cast out. Additionally, after SpaceX Starship's SN8 crash, and many of them have had written articles writing off SpaceX Starship as complete failure, it called the future into the question, all over a test that was designed to fail so they could improve the design. I think that this large insecurity could go away if society at least gave people an environment where they're allowed to fail, allowed to make mistakes. Completely agree with the sentiment. Have hope. All the coverage I saw on the SpaceX stuff was, they considered a success precisely because of the reasons you talked about. It was a stress test. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of hope. I do agree, though, for numerous reasons, society needs to become more tolerant of mistakes. This zero-sum stuff, not cool. Not good for anybody. Next comment. The first is that I feel so much embarrassment and shame for the things I like. I like video games. I like cartoons and comics a lot. I collect Transformers and other figures. You're a good person, whoever this is. Sorry, that was my commentary. I dabble in writing fan fiction. Gaming and comics have become mainstream enough that I can talk about them now. But I still can't reveal just how into them I am. As for the collecting, I'm legitimately afraid of dating again because at some point that hobby will have to be revealed. And as far as I'm concerned, fan fiction will be something I'll take to the grave. I had a girlfriend who was a perfect outlet for all of this stuff, but I ended that relationship because that was the only positive aspect to it. The other big one is a recent concern I have. I'm afraid that I'm too much of a coward, here we go again, to stand up for what I believe. I grew up learning that resistance is futile and the best path of survival is to get on the ropes and wait for the bell. Thanks, Dad, for that and the previously mentioned shame. I'm a Republican, a capitalist, a gamer, a white straight dude, and INTJ. These last few years have told me that I am the enemy of progress. This last month has shown me that those in charge of the narrative are playing by their own rules. I'm finding myself afraid that we're on the precipice of a recreation of the French Revolution, and I know I'll be on the list. And then I worry if I would have the courage to stand up for what I believe or compromise myself yet again in the name of hollow survival. I'm very pleased to hear I have Republican viewers. That makes me happy because, I'm left wing and I'm glad that my content is, sufficiently sane that people with different views can partake in it. So that makes me happy. As far as the whole toy collecting thing goes, I know I'm not normal, but if you saw, he called himself a guy, so I'm not saying names for obvious reasons on this, but sometimes it's harder than others to find somebody with common interests, or at least somebody that accepts your interests, but they are out there. And, if toy collecting is the least, is the most shameful thing you do, I think you're doing okay. I'm not trying to downplay this. I'm just trying to reassure. Okay. There does seem to be a lot of stuff relating to people's fathers, in these comments, which I think needs more exploration on kind of a macro level. But now I'm navel gazing and this is about your feedback. I'm struck by the similarities. The word coward comes up a lot, another one here. I do know that I'm a people pleaser and find I'm disliking how cowardly that makes me, my perception of myself as a result. I guess that could be phrased that I'm insecure in my real self, that I fear people would judge me if I'm fully open and honest about who I am. So I instinctually try to hide that and present a mask or just self-censor in an effort to avoid the judgment I fear. Though I also realize that I'm doing that based on assumptions about others. This is something I'm actively trying to overcome. This cowardly. I know I said I'd just read your comments, but I want to provide support as well here. There's a difference between discretion is the better part of valor and cowardice. It is not cowardice to recognize that no good will come from you saying something, that you'll just get eaten alive. There are people like me that, for various reasons are in a position to keep taking it on the chin, get knocked down, get back up again. Just because you don't have, just because you're not the glutton for punishment that I am, does not mean you're a coward. It means you might be smarter than me. But, it really depends if you're doing it. If you're doing it to the point that you're having trouble living with yourself, yes, you do need to stand up for yourself if you feel yourself eroding. Now, there are different ways of standing up for yourself. And like I said, part of the reason I'm asking these questions is I'm thinking about doing a series on trauma. It is not cowardly to have discretion. It is not cowardly to be a small person in a big world and not know what to do about that. And I'm saying this as somebody who does, like, as I step out there and take it on the chin. But to me, cowardice is when you take that step into actively screwing over other people, when you start doing things that you know are wrong, just so, it doesn't blow back on you. That to me is cowardice. Shutting your mouth because it ain't worth it, that doesn't quite go there. So hopefully that assures some people. On the same, a few more in the same vein, but expressed differently, okay? I'm not nearly as sure of my beliefs as I try to come across. I routinely worry that I'm on the wrong side, or that all the complexities of my politics are just rationalizations for self-interest. I know that I often feel something first and then come up with reasoning to explain and validate my feelings. Is this just logic taking a bit of time to catch up to emotion, or am I gerrymandering the facts? I often have trouble making sense of the constantly conflicting left-right news and knowing reality from conspiracy theory. When I am sure of stuff, it's often because it's something in my professional wheelhouse, but I can't bring that into the argument because claiming expertise or credentials online usually just results in what is effectively dox yourself to prove you really have a job in the field or you're a liar. There's so many catch-22s to online discourse that make it exhausting and frustrating. If you take a stance on an issue and stick to it, you're an extremist. If you ever change your mind, you're a hypocrite. If you claim to know what you're talking about, you're a LARPer. Okay. If you admit uncertainty, you're a fence sitter. If you seem to care about the issue, you're obsessed. If you try to sound aloof, you're a troll. I don't have any of this nearly as figured out as I try to sound like I do. This commenter sounds like a critical thinker who's just had a lot of gaslighting. I think that anybody who doesn't periodically question their views is there. That's too much certainty. There is such thing as too much certainty. It is okay to question what you're saying. It is okay to not have to sound and I am breaking a rule of my profession here. It is okay to not sound totally sure of what you're saying, which is used to be no, if you're going to do op-ed writing, you have to pound the table, you have to be strong, use forceful language, use active language. And I think that's wrong. I think that created a toxic paradigm in media and in discourse, that everybody just has to be rah, 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 instead of, I'm sure about this part, the rest of this stuff, not so much, but this I feel pretty good about, right? So I try not to do that. I try to pick topics that I feel like I have a handle on, but I very greatly respect people who say they're not sure about a particular aspect of something. So I try to do that myself. Sometimes I just overstate for entertainment value, but I'm just, again, trying to show some support. I didn't know that if you claim to know what you're talking about, you're a LARPer. I didn't know about the LARPer thing. That I needed a minute. It's like, okay, I guess that sort of makes sense. Next comment. I'm a little afraid to have an idea involving race as a white person. It's almost like white doesn't actually exist as a race. Like we're actually some kind of race ghosts who can't connect to living other races. I was on TikTok, probably the first mistake. I was trying to explain to an Asian woman that yes, white people ask each other what kind of white person they are all the time. So in that cultural context, asking what are you isn't weird, it's inclusive. I got dogpiled for it because I'm white. I just wanted to point out a bit of white culture, which exists and is bad, and white people don't have any of the same at the same time somehow. That got lost in translation. I didn't say, well, you should be comfortable with it. It's just that it happens. I just don't feel like I'm a part of anything cultural or racial. And if I have anything to say, it needs to go through someone who has a culture and race just to be sure that it's okay. Somewhere it stopped being, let's celebrate something else, to you don't exist. And I'm not sure where it started being like that. That's just my experience, though. Maybe I'm weird and no one else feels that way. Well, if no one else felt that way, I think you can maybe kind of see from the other comments. Other people do feel that way. So hopefully that helps. I'm in a unique position with this stuff because of the whole ginger thing. You know, we're being gradually erased from media because there are too few of us to complain. So it is weird. You know, I do think that is an error in the discourse. I get what you're saying about it being a tick of white culture, especially in North America, since everybody's like, you know, my family's from England, my family's from Ireland, all that stuff. They got the flags in their, rec room and all that stuff. My mother proudly insists, we're third generation Canadian. So, that's less impressive than people from Indigenous backgrounds who were, 23rd generation Canadians in all likelihood. But she's very proud that we're third generation Canadian. Yeah, it's a thing that we're gonna have to work out. And what passes for critical race theory on the internet and on some cable news services is not, in fact, the proper, the proper exposure to critical race theory. Ibram X. Kendi talks about, being racist against white people is still racist. And, oh, by the way, if you buy into the idea that there is, systemic racism, then hating other people just boomerangs back around on you, because if you hate somebody, then you give other people the right to hate you. So it's ultimately self-defeating. And he, I forget which book it was, but he gets into when he realized that he was kind of racist, and he had to stop doing that. It wasn't right. So yeah, this is something that's going to have to be worked through. Now, again, hopefully this community helps to give you somewhere where you feel like you can express comments like that. Because I find sometimes just being able to say stuff like that, it cracks the can, so the pressure releases, right? Sometimes just being able to express that and have people not treat you like you just bursted into flame, that's enough to sort of make you more comfortable and be a little less affected. Because assholes come in all shapes, sizes, and colors, right? And there are a lot of assholes out there. And just because assholes have fancier language nowadays doesn't mean they're not assholes, right? And people dogpiling you because what you said sounded similar to stuff that's been said in the past, it sucks, but it's not your fault, right? As long as you're open to hearing how it landed, some give and take is an all right thing to hope for. So moving on, these are other types of other types of insecurity. So we're getting off the culture war stuff and getting into other types, because I didn't want to focus entirely on the culture war. I just wanted to show how much of a common theme that was. One person said the insecurity is, I think I'm going to live my life until its end alone, and I'm not happy about that. No bloody reason for it aside from being the shy kid in school with low self-esteem, because I'm not that kid anymore. Yet my attempts to fix my relationship status tend to either never happen or simply go nowhere. If this helps, I am a big believer in romantic relationships. The healthy ones are what happens when you're doing other things. Living your whole life single is far from the worst thing. And living your whole life single is better than being in an abusive relationship. There is no shame in being single. In a lot of ways, you get to pursue other goals in life. So again, try to pull that tab, take the pressure off, enjoy what you have instead of focusing on what you don't have. And I'm a big believer that once you do that, those other things take care of themselves. So moving along, my insecurity is that I'm a melancholy person, which tends to get pathologized as depression in this normalistic society fixated on utilitarian happiness. I don't disregard or glorify depression, but melancholy is not the same thing. I find the idea that depression is long-lasting sadness not only wrong, but harmful and oppressive. That's actually true. Depression is not just being sad. Melancholy, I get what this commenter is saying. And again, it's a happy medium thing. A lot of people have a tendency to want to cheer up a sad person. I know sometimes I find this extremely annoying. I'm one of those people that when something makes me sad or something makes me angry, I want to be able to feel that emotion and process it and get on with things. But I have to be able to feel it before I can move on, right? And when people try to cheer me up, sometimes it works. More often than not, it just makes me angry. Because they're getting in the way of my process and my systemized INTJ thinking. Like, it's a major accomplishment for me to admit I have a feeling, right? Because I'm an INTJ. It's not a collection of thoughts. No, it's actually a feeling. That thing the other commenter said, yes, feelings happen faster than thoughts. Most people have a feeling first, have the thought second. Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind is a wonderful book on this subject. But yeah, I hear you. I think some people just want to cheer people up because that's what they would like. And this is where we get in the thing of it's great to treat people the way you'd like to be treated, but not everybody likes to be treated the same way, right? Right. Okay. Running up on the half hour, so here we go. Some inclusion insecurities. My biggest insecurity that I don't really talk about is the extent of my struggles with my heavy dyslexia. The few times I've brought it up with people that aren't my closest friends, I've gotten comments like, well, most people can't really spell anyway, and I bet everyone is a little bit dyslexic. I need a minute. Those kind of comments and how combative a lot of people are regarding the topic of disabilities. I'm even scared of calling my dyslexia a disability since I've got the feeling that my dyslexia isn't enough of a problem to be a disability, and my struggles with it just because I haven't worked hard enough to make it go away, and the fact that I'm writing this took me half an hour is just being lazy. No, it's not you being lazy, commenter. It's not you being lazy. Dyslexia is real. I know multiple people who have it. Working at it does make it better, but you said you have heavy dyslexia, and that is a real thing. And if your dyslexia is so heavy that it took you a half hour to write that, that's a disability. There are local groups that you can reach out to for supports with some of this stuff. What you have is real. What you have matters. It's not a death sentence, right? You're not cursed or anything like that. It's just, it is real and it is a challenge. And you deserve for that to just be a part of you that doesn't make you feel bad, right? It's just a thing. Everybody has their things. Some of our things have names. Some of our things are weird. I'm somebody that happens to have both things with names and things that are just weird. They complement each other nicely. But if it means anything, no. Heavy dyslexia is a disability as far as I'm concerned. Not that that matters. That doesn't mean you are a disabled person. That's why we say person with a disability. It's just one part of your life, right? That sounds like you wish you had some more help with. So moving on, because there's another, and this might help here. Regarding the insecurity question, there are 2 points that I have great insecurities. The first is to provide my point of view when people are talking about social events. Don't mean to beat a dead horse by saying I'm autistic, but it needs said that when I try to contribute, I'm either written off as not understanding or I face angry retorts with no explanation on why my contribution was upsetting. The other is a bit more gaming related, and I wonder how many others face this, but I love to play female characters just as much as male characters, but I'm always worried I would be labeled as weird by others when talk about playing as my opposite sex or joked about. If it means anything, commenter, I have a very good friend that I met because we both play female characters. He's male, but we both play female characters in Dragon Age and romance the same guy in game. And we come from very different backgrounds, but it was a bonding thing. It's like, okay, we have nothing in common on paper, but obviously we have certain similarities at our core since we made the exact same choice. So the autism thing is so much tougher. And this is why, I try to normalize it because it's certain things are exasperating just because you want to follow along what the person is saying, but sometimes you just get lost because of the neurotypicality. But I do think some people are sort of obsessed with normal, or that not understanding. They are so interested in being heard that the listening doesn't quite go that way, especially if they know you have autism. I wish more people could actually explain why something was bothersome instead of just getting angry and shaming people. That's something I'd really like. So now we get into, and I'm not going to leave it here. I'm going to lighten it up afterwards, but there were some comments that were freaking real, and I wanted to read them because I'm like, this is a glimpse into a point of view that I have no... Anyway, the first one, softer, okay? My main insecurity is the fear that I may never find true love because I have some views that certain young feminists frown upon, like thinking Woody Allen is an innocent man. I will just say, thinking Woody Allen is innocent, none of us can know, we weren't there, right? If thinking what he is accused of is okay, different kettle of fish, right? Different, you think he didn't do it. We don't know, right? It will never go to trial. It's being tried in the court of public opinion. I know because, I followed the Johnny Depp stuff rather lengthily, and the number of people in entertainment who that comes up and everybody's just like, I don't know what's going on. They get off it so fast because they know what the politically correct thing to say is, but they just can't bring themselves to say it. So that's me attempting, because I don't think Woody Allen's innocent, I'll be honest, but I'm not his judge, right? So hopefully that helps some, because I want to give you credit for taking that risk, knowing that I do identify as a feminist. So this is the one I'm like, I got to read this just because this took guts to write. Again, I'm going to say this might disturb you, but we can't judge. as part of this exercise, right? Again, this is an insecurity. Okay. Here's what I'm most secure about. I am a MAP, a minor attracted person. I am not worried about offending. I am insecure about how I may unconsciously act or how my hyper awareness of controlling my behavior to seem normal may be viewed. Also, how it affects every aspect of my life and how afraid of reactions and how little anyone would care that I have never offended in any way. That's my biggest insecurity. And when I first saw that, I'm like, whoa. Which, in a professional setting, you're not supposed to do that. But let me explain the whoa. This person wins the insecurity. Not that it's a contest, but if it was, because, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to put myself in this position of admitting to yourself that you're at, recognizing you have to control it, and it just being this ongoing struggle. Like, wow. And I really appreciate if the commenter had tried to justify that or normalize it in any way, I would take a different approach, but they didn't. And that was some real stuff. Part of the reason I included is, okay, everybody who, is worried they're going to be rejected, think about how this person feels, right? Who is trying to go through life not hurting anybody, right? So little bit of perspective there. I admit I read that as like, I think that took guts to even write. Knowing what strong reactions people get. So that was me, like I said, trying to empathize with a point of view that I'm never going to connect with, without, you can't validate something like that, but you can validate the struggle, if that makes any sense. It's somebody who's being as responsible as somebody can in that frame. Let's move on. I tend to believe that I'm bothering everyone all the time. I never talk about it because I either think that talking about it will bother people or that some of them can see through my facade of confidence and just don't care. It holds me back in a lot of everything I do. On the good side, I'm fine with quarantine and social distancing. I left these to the end because I relate to that. Yeah, and I know it's just because I've, background. People are like, oh my God, you're so annoying. And when you're a ginger kid, that's a thing. It's that annoying ginger, the evil ginger, everything like that. You do internalize some of that. So and then, you come up and read comments where she's so annoying. She's so cringe. She's so this, Some days it gets to me. Some days it's like, wow, it gets under your skin, right? So I relate to that. My biggest unspoken insecurity, imposter syndrome. That is a tough one. Imposter syndrome is a tough one. I don't have professional imposter syndrome. I have social imposter syndrome. If I'm around gamers, it's fine. But whenever I have to go to like a bridal shower or anything to do with, those traditional like baby things, like baby showers or anything like that, I feel like I don't belong, and eventually somebody's going to see that should I leave before they throw me out kind of thing. So that it's uncomfortable, man. It's uncomfortable. So the last one, I left this to the end because I 100% share this. Okay. A big insecurity I have is asking for help. I know it's related to my upbringing, but I feel very ashamed if I ever build up the courage to ask someone for help or even worse, money. And I feel even more embarrassed if they actually do help, especially if they offer to without me asking. And I know this is irrational. I've been there for friends and family in the same ways. I know that most of the time it isn't a big deal, but when the roles are reversed, that logic does not compute for me, and I feel like I'm being the biggest inconvenience and asking too much. And that's what happens to me every time I do a Kickstarter. Just that little help support this channel thing, I had to make that into a thing so I do not become nauseous every time I do it. asking for things. It is childhood conditioning. I know it is, but oh God, last week I had to follow up and go, hey, you know that thing I asked for? And it was in like a professional context. Like, could you get it for me? I was so freaked out. Like, in the fact that I had to do it twice in a week, I was just like, oh, I'm wiped. I'm exhausted. Like, trying to get the show done. And then that twice in 1 week, it's like a physical response. It is an aversion, man. And I pushed through it, but then I want to barf. So I left that to the end because it's one I 100% share. I relate. Okay. So now that I do that, I have to do the thing I can't stand. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. And now I'm feeling a little bit queasy about it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching.